I am Chris.
And I'm Michelle, and we are back today with Hits and Misses Volume 2, Hunger Games, Catching Fire.
All right, before we get started, just want to let you know that we here at Dees Nerds, we're all about talking about the things we love and why we love them in the world of nerddom, whether that be film, TV, whatever tickles our fancy, really. So, if you like what we're doing here, please subscribe to the channel, as well as click the bell icon so you know when those videos are coming out, as well as like this video. If you like it, give us a comment as well. We love to get into that discussion with you as well. So with that said, we're going to be talking about the Hunger Games Catching Fire. You'll see, actually we'll put it down in the description, as well as you should see the title card right up here. That's links you to the first volume of our video for the Hunger Games. This is about catching fire, trying to look at what was accurate with the book versus the film and what was not accurate, as in hits and misses. So, Michelle, I will let you run with it and let us know what you found out.
All right, so first of all, I want to say I really enjoyed rereading these, especially since today actually is the release day for A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So I just finished reading this recently and really enjoyed it, and really it had been so long since I actually read them. We watched the movie all the time, but it had been so long since I actually reread them that I had forgotten a lot of things. And so it was really nice for me even to just go back to work on this video, because it allowed me to see some things that I'd forgotten. So the first thing I'll talk about is the things that this film does really well. And I actually watched a little bit of special features on this, but one of the things that works really well with this book and this movie are that they actually took a lot of conversations word for word from the book, which I would say is probably much less true of the first book. I felt like they took a lot more liberties with the conversations themselves between characters and things like that in the Hunger Games. And then in Catching Fire, there are tons of them where they honestly just took what's in here and just deleted the narration parts. And I mean, it just follows exactly. So some of those things are at the beginning of the movie when Katniss and President Snow have a conversation when he pops up at her house unexpectedly. That conversation is pretty much exactly what is in this book. So it's pretty cool to see some of those things, because I think as someone who loves books, you always want to see the truest adaptation of whatever it is that you've read and you've loved, and when you will see it on film, it's always disappointing when some of those conversations that were really interesting go out the window. So in this one, it's great. Another one is Gale's conversation with Katniss about uprisings, because she accidentally sees some video that she wasn't supposed to see of uprisings in other districts, and he talks to her about it, and that conversation that they have and kind of its descent into him realizing that he finally has a chance to make a difference is pretty much exactly what's in the book. And it's a good conversation, and it was a hard conversation, and I was glad they went with what it was. Some other things that I felt like went really well were just some of the big moments. So, Gale getting whipped in the square, that was a really big moment, and I felt like they did that really well. Even though in the book it actually happens under slightly different circumstances than it does in the movie, I think the act itself was portrayed well, and the brutality of it for a movie that's really, kind of geared toward teens and tweens in a lot of ways is really nice to see that they kind of don't gloss over too much of it.
Yeah, that scene particularly was still gives me like the heebie-jeebies, like that you just think about like how much that would hurt. And
well, and when Commander Thread takes his whip at the end and just like slings the blood and it goes like on them standing there.
Yeah.
Ugh.
What a jerk.
So other things, the announcement of the quarter quell is another one that's really super accurate. So they get the announcement on TV, Katniss runs for it and hides and freaks out for a while. And in the meantime, Peeta has already gone and talked to Haymitch. And then when Katniss shows it to Haymitch, it's pretty much exactly what goes on there, with the exception of, in the book, she actually goes to get drunk. I mean, she says she comes to drink in the movie, but they didn't actually go into that. But in the book, she actually gets drunk and is completely hungover and miserable the next day. And she can't believe that people do that for a regular activity.
Like Haymitch.
Yes, like Haymitch. Very much like Haymitch.
And let's just face it, when it really comes down to who is the best person, it's Peeta. I mean, I think Haymitch says it best. You know, you could live 1,000 lifetimes or something like
and
that,
never deserve that
and
boy.
never deserve that boy. And he's right. I mean, Peeta's just. It's really cool too. Like, you watch all these movies and you read the books. Peeta never really loses who he is and all that, the exception of the first part of Mockingjay. He's such a good person throughout all that and doesn't lose that. Whereas Katniss clearly goes on a ride, character development wise.
Yeah, Katniss definitely skirts some dangerous territory a couple times, and I think Gale falls right into it. But that's more conversation for the next video.
Absolutely, yeah.
So anyway, those reactions were all really well done and everything. And one of my favorite moments in this first part is when they go on the victory tour and they end up at the Capitol and they're at this big ball banquet thing, and they're remarking to her prep team that there's so much delicious food and they can't possibly try all of it. And so they hand Peeta this pink drink and they're like, here, drink this. And he's like, okay, what for? And they're like, it'll make you sick so you can go on eating. And he just goes, I think it's time for a dance.
Definitely one of my favorite moments in that movie.
That's not exactly how that happens in the book, but the general spirit of it is definitely there. But yeah, we love that point in the movie. It just cracks us up. I mean, the horrible idea that somebody is drinking something to make themselves sick so they can eat some more, while, as they point out in both the book and the movie, people are starving in their district, and these people are just getting sick to eat it again. So it's just awful. But that was such a funny moment in the movie and really poignant, I thought. So another one of my favorite scenes is right before the parade of the tributes, when Finnick and Katniss meet. And this is one of those conversations that is honestly stolen word for word out of the book. I mean, you can follow it by the whole page. And it's such a great conversation, and I think that Sam Claflin did such a great job embodying that character of Finnick. I think everybody was a little bit skeptical when we very first saw him get cast in that role, because I think the only thing he'd been up to that point really was in Pirates of the Caribbean 4, which was not a super stellar movie, but his character didn't really fit that kind of Finnick feeling, and so I think everybody kind of went, I don't know about that. But then you get him on screen and he's perfect.
You used the word skeptical. I would use the word outright hostile when that was announced. I mean, I saw so many people just lose their minds, and it goes back to, and I mean, we can talk about this with, there's so many examples of someone getting cast in a film and the fan base just going, what? Why did you do that? And then it ended up being one of the best performances in that film, and that you can go down the line so many different times where that's happened. So, if you're a fan, reserve judgment, please, because otherwise you're just going to end up looking like an idiot probably later on. So, absolutely.
All right. So are you off your soapbox?
Always.
Okay. So the one thing that I actually think that the movie did a little bit better than the book did were the interviews. So we talked about the interviews with Hunger Games and how there was this whole extended scene of interviews that is in the deleted scenes on our Blu-ray set. And I think that a lot of that was created specifically for the movie, even though it didn't make it in the final cut. But in the interviews in this book, she actually doesn't use any of the actual dialogue. Katniss in narration just sort of summarizes what happened. And so actually, I think when they get into the interviews, because all these tributes, or most of these tributes, are so upset that they've been forced to go back to the games again, that it's really awesome to see actual conversations come out. I mean, you have to love Joanna Mason just screaming expletives at the audience. When she did not do that here. It's kind of described that she had, but we don't ever actually hear anything that she says. But I think it definitely portrays a lot more of the anger, and you get a lot more of that across with the actual interviews. So I think the interviews in the movie are much better than the narration and the summary we get in the book.
Well, which one is your favorite out of all that? Because there's a few of them there that are... Well,
it's actually another one of our favorite moments in there. So in the interview when Peeta comes in and says, well, it would be all right if it weren't for the baby, and then everyone just loses it. And he just, you have to watch it closely, but he just looks over this tiniest little smirk on his face over at Haymitch, and Haymitch just got his drink going.
Yep, there you go.
Good job.
Oh, that's such a great moment. And that's just the subtle acting going on between Josh Hutcherson and Woody Harrelson.
Yeah, which apparently the two of them and Jennifer Lawrence had almost like such a close relationship. They almost had a shorthand and a code when they talked to each other and spent time together because they were together so often.
Yeah, I know, like in the special features there, they talk at length about how, Jennifer Lawrence, Josh Hutcherson, Woody Harrelson, like they would just all be like cracking jokes and everything, and be about to shoot this really serious scene, and then they go, okay, action, and then they just go right in, and that really shows great chemistry.
Yeah, they're really great together. So there are a lot of other things that does really well, but basically, just to summarize it, the arena. I mean, the arena is almost perfect. When I look at the things that I wrote down I always make a chart when I do these, by the way. So I take notes as I watch and I read, and I kind of figure things out. So on my chart, the things that are misses in this movie, all but 5 things I wrote down out of probably about 25 happened before you ever get to the arena. The arena is just about perfect. And really the things in the arena that aren't exactly perfect are either not entirely necessary, or they're a piece of something that was lost because of something they changed in the first movie. So heading into those misses a little bit. So one thing that that I think definitely they struggle with, and I feel like this is the case in a lot of movies, so it's definitely not unique to this franchise, is the perception of time passing. Because it feels like in the movie that the whole thing at the beginning moves really, really fast. Like all the way up till they get reaped. It feels really, really fast. Whereas actually in the book, this happens over the course of months. So we see all these things. We kind of get more time with Katniss in between and what she's actually doing with all of this free time that she's now acquired. And more time with her just kind of reflecting on things out in the woods. And you definitely get the sense that things have taken a lot longer. And you also get to know some of the things that the tributes are supposed to have, almost like beauty pageant type talents. And so the Katniss was supposedly supposed to be designing clothes, which is really just a thing she was doing with Cinna. That really doesn't have so much bearing on the story, but I was a little bummed they didn't incorporate Peeta's painting hobby in here, because we hear so much about how Katniss deals with things and how she deals with the games. And Peeta's way of dealing with it was that he painted all the things that he dreamed about. So all these awful moments from the arena, he painted them. And Katniss sees them for the first time when they're on the train on the victory tour. And she just basically says they're horrible. I hate them because she doesn't want to relive all those things. I mean, she can recognize that he's done a good job, obviously, but that's the last thing she wants to see. But I think it was interesting. And they do, I mean, you see a tiny bit of it when you see his painting of Rue at their, what do they call that? Not their audition, but like their display for the game makers. I don't know. I can't remember what they call that. Where they assign
the score to them.
Yeah, where they assign the score and stuff. And on the victory tour, one thing that happened was something that I'm surprised that they left out, and I'm really not sure what the decision was there. But when she dances with Plutarch, at that point he's supposed to pull out a gold pocket watch and open it up, and there's supposed to be a flash of a Mockingjay over it that disappears. And that's actually a twofold thing. So it's supposed to be that it's like a subtle hint that he's on her side, but it also becomes she realizes later on it's a much bigger hint when it occurs to her because of Wiress, that the arena is set up like a clock. So because when she realizes it's a clock, it circles back in her mind and thinks, oh, I wonder if he was trying to give me a hint. And at that point, at least as far as we know in the book, he doesn't know that she's going to end up back in the game. So she thinks that he must have been giving that clue to her as a potential mentor for a tribute. But either way, she realizes there was something there. But I just wish they had left that in because it's such a small thing. And I don't know if they took it out because maybe there was no way for her to reflect on that without just talking out loud to herself maybe. But I wish they had left it in because it was kind of a nice little hint ahead of time that he was going to be a rebel leader.
Plus, I mean, adding more stuff for Philip Seymour Hoffman to do.
Yes.
I mean, rest in peace, one of the greatest actors of all time. I mean, should have given him more to do, basically.
So after the victory tour, this is where I was talking in the book about how it seems like time passes much more slowly in the book. Katniss goes home, and she actually has some time before they announce the plan for the Quarter Quell. And what I remember her mother saying in the book that they still had like 3 months left before the games would begin, and it was surprising that they were announcing the quarter quell and everything so early. And so one big thing that happens there is that they find out that they're going to have to go back. And PETA says, okay, we know that 2 of the 3 of us are going back. We're going to train like careers, which is something that is a unique opportunity for them, is that they have the chance to actually go and get better at everything. So at that point in the book, actually Haymitch gives up drinking, and all 3 of them train hard. They run, they work out, they practice with weapons, and they do this all the way up to the point where the reaping actually takes place. So they have like a 3-month period in there where they're training really hard, so that whoever ended up in there was going to be fit for it.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that they left that out, because in the first movie, I mean, she's really good with bow and arrow, but it's in terms of like hunting and different things like that. And you get to Catching Fire, the scene in the training center where she's doing all these flips, and she's basically like Hawkeye from the Avengers essentially. And it's like, okay, it's a little jarring to watch that. You read this and you understand why, but it's really jarring to watch her from the first movie to the second movie go from like being really good with a bow and arrow to being like a superhero. And so that part was a little like, oh, okay. And like, if you haven't read the book, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, because that definitely feels like it fills in a blank there. Kind of fills a story hole almost.
Yeah.
So along with that, at that point, there's actually several things that take place that are pretty significant before she ever even technically gets reaped. So one of those things is that she goes out to this house in the woods that she used to go to with her dad and had gone to with Gail, and she meets 2 refugees or runaways from District 8 because they're trying to get to District 13. And that's at the point where we kind of learn more about District 13, because Katniss says, why are you going to 13? There's nothing there. It's been a ruin for years. And the 2 people that she meets, their names are Twill and Bonnie, they point out to her that in the corner of the screen, every time there's ever been a broadcast that's supposedly taking place in 13 on the news, there's always this mockingjay that you see in the corner of the screen that flies by and you can see its wings. And so the next time that Katniss watches the TV, she sees it, and then she starts to kind of suspect that maybe there's something more there. Because I feel like in the book, she's just kind of ignorant about all of that until the point where she's getting taken there. So it was kind of nice, again, to have that little clue beforehand, that little moment where we get a little bit more insight, because up to this point, we've had no reason to believe anything was in 13 either. So it was kind of a nice little Easter egg there, I guess. And then trying to get back from that very incident, the fence is electrified for the first time she can remember in a long time, and it's fully electrified, and she ends up having to climb a tree and falls getting down and hurts her ankle, and is actually laid up for a little bit and can't go anywhere. But it was intentional. Somebody knew that she had gone out there. Commander Thread had them turn the electric fence back on, and then he actually had 2 peacekeepers waiting at her house expecting her to not come back. So they were really trying to catch her in a trap. So when she showed up, they were all very aggravated and made sure to tell her, hey, the fence is going to be electrified 24 hours now. She's like, oh, wasn't it always? Like, just playing dumb. So
smooth.
So yeah, that was another thing I kind of wish that they had thrown in there, if only because it was actually I felt like it was a pretty significant plot point in the first part of the book. So one other thing that I don't know how they would have really incorporated this, but one thing that I loved in the book was when they watched the tapes of the previous tributes. So Effie basically sends them tapes of every Hunger Games that someone might possibly get reaped from, since it's all the old victors, and they start watching all these tapes. Well, initially they don't bother to watch the 50th Hunger Games, because that's the Hunger Games that Haymitch won, and at that point they know that Haymitch isn't going. And then all of a sudden Peeta's like, I've always kind of wondered how Haymitch won his games. And so they watch Haymitch on tape, and that was really cool, because Haymitch, similarly to like how Beatty was trying to use the force field to kill people, or he electrified a bunch of tributes at once to win, Haymitch discovers that the force field will throw things back to him. So he gets chased, I think, to the edge of a cliff, and he tosses something over, and then it comes back to him. And so later in the game, it's him and this other girl left, and he's like literally got his guts hanging out, like he's holding them in while he's running, runs to this cliff, and she's got an axe. He ducks, she pitches it over, and is just standing there, and it comes back and goes right in the middle of her forehead, and that's how he wins.
That's pretty cool. I wish that would have been live action at some point.
That would have been really cool.
Yeah.
And the other part of that is, since it was the 50th Hunger Games, it was the previous quarter quell. And so there was actually that quarter quell double the amount of tributes from every district were taken in. So there was actually 48 of them instead of 24. So there was a lot of interesting stuff there, I think, about Haymitch. And it was just a bummer that it wasn't there. But I don't know how they would really do that without it being weird in the movie. But that was definitely something I missed, although I don't know how it would work cinematically. So another thing, in the movie, you do actually see them go and they show their skills in front of the game makers. Peeta uses the camouflage station to paint the picture of Rue on the floor, and Katniss uses the dummy and the rope and her knot tying skill she learned from Finnick on how to make a noose, and hangs a dummy of Seneca Crane.
So wonderful.
And you don't actually get the payoff from it this time. You get the payoff in the first time where you get to see her get the 11, but this time she and Peeta both get 12s, which they look at and panic because they're like, oh gosh, we have targets painted on our backs now. So it's good in one way because they're going to get sponsors and get help. And then it's bad in one way because if the other victors aren't with them, then they're definitely going to want to take them out quickly.
Yeah.
Because of course none of the other victors know what they showed. Once you get into the arena, though, there's so little to complain about. I mean, there's very little difference between what happens in the book and what happens in the movie. I would say in the book, there's just a little bit longer sequences of kind of the in-between fight scenes, or in between battling whatever's in the particular wedge of the arena and the clock. But basically, everything is the same. Now, there are a couple of things that are different that I think are notable. So one of them is how Peeta actually starts out in the arena. And I think a little bit of this is partially due to the fact that they changed what the costumes were supposed to look like that they wore in the arena. Mm-hmm. So they were supposed to have something kind of similar to what they have on, but they were supposed to have a big flotation belt on, actually. So that even the victors who couldn't swim, because not everybody had a reason to know how to swim, would still be able to stay afloat and it wouldn't immediately drown them. Whereas in the movie, nobody has that. And so Peeta, who can't swim, is immediately drowning. And is getting attacked by another victor, and Finnick has to go in and save him. And I think in the book, basically, he's just like kind of staying afloat, and Finnick has to go out and like pull him in or something. So it's not as big a deal. But of course, for film, it was much more dramatic the other way.
Of course. Dramatic.
And
acting.
And speaking of Finnick, there's this one scene with him and Katniss that I really had forgotten about, but I'm so sad they didn't put it in. Because it was part of the kind of what I'm calling extended in between the fight scene sequences. So there's a point where Katniss and Finnick are, I think it's after they get the poison fog and get away from the monkeys and everything. Peeta's laying asleep like on the beach or in the edge of the jungle or whatever. And Finnick and Katniss have been putting on medicine and like trying to take care of themselves. And they got the medicine because Finnick tries to play with Katniss. So he says, like, she's like, oh, we gotta wake up Peeta. And he's like, let's get in his face and scare him. So they have this cute moment where they both like get right in Peeta's face and like make him jump out of his skin. And then immediately another parachute comes with stuff for them. And this is another one of those moments where Katniss is looking at this going, okay, being friends with Finnick equals help from sponsors, according to Haymitch. So it was a cute moment in the book, and it was an easy one I wish they could have thrown in there. But I mean, not ultimately necessary or story changing, but it was still a fun moment.
Finnick is definitely one of my favorites in this whole story.
He's a lot of fun, and it was I think he really gave something to the story when he came into it.
Absolutely. There's definitely an energy level that just shot up.
Now, my last thing is probably the thing that he has heard me gripe about the most with us watching this movie. So in the arena, they have the cornucopia in the middle and all the water surrounding it, and then the clock shape with all of the different traps in each hour. And the whole big thing is that 12 o'clock is the lightning tree. But in the movie, it's so stupid because there's just this one big giant tree that's hanging out. So when they get on the cornucopia and Plutarch goes, let's see how they tell time now, and spins them all this time, and it's supposed to disorient them somehow. I'm like, okay, But looking at this arena, all I have to do is stand up and go, oh, look, there's the big tree. That's 12 o'clock again. We're good. And so I was like, why is this a thing? Why is this so dumb? Well, it's because they changed it for the movie. So in the book, Katniss actually remarks that there are 12 identical trees. There's a tree exactly like that in every part of the arena.
Mm-hmm.
So it would not be obvious for you to just stand up and find the giant tall tree again, like it was in the movie, which aggravates me every single time. And I had actually forgotten that was different in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But that just made me so mad.
It's like, one tree in each wedge, you're good. Like, it's not even like a hard thing. It's just, that was the one tree. It was like, of course, yeah, you just look at that, okay, we're good. And like,
okay, like, everybody look around, let's find the giant tree again. There it is.
And I mean, let's face it, even the movies that we love the most and cherish the most, we can all find one thing. It's just like, really? Like,
yeah, to me, the other stuff was just like, it would have been nice if it was there, but to me, that was such a just like a moment.
Absolutely.
Like, okay. But I think that about wraps it up for this one. This is a stellar movie. It's a stellar book series. If you watch the movies and never read the books, I highly recommend you go pick them up because they're a lot of fun. And as of today, you have a brand new one you can go pick up that's a prequel by 65 years, I think. So it's supposed to be taking place in the 10th Hunger Games. And President Snow, before he is president, is actually a mentor for the victor for the girl tribute from District 12. So that's all in the front flap. I did not spoil anything for you. That's literally what the summary of the book is.
Absolutely.
So, anyway, if there's something you're interested in reading, definitely go pick up a copy. And I hope you enjoyed this video. So this was Catching Fire, Hits and Misses.
Bam. Yeah.
Don't forget to like this video, comment down below if you have any other thoughts about things we didn't discuss, and if you have any suggestions for another Hits and Misses video we could do, please let us know. Please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell to get notifications, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.